The Great Wall review. Okay, couple of things just to get off at the start. There will be some spoilers in this review, and secondly, if you haven't watched this film, this was something that I only found out sort of the day before I watched it. This isn't historically accurate. It's a mythological based story. I did a little bit of research, and it is something that is sort of real in Chinese mythology, and so Chinese people of that time did, generally believe that these beasts may well exist and was a threat, and one of the reasons why the wall was built, in their opinion. But don't be going in thinking you're going to learn anything about a certain period within Chinese history, because you're not really. All that said, the general film itself, I didn't mind too much. As I was watching it, I did realise, or I did think to myself, okay, I'm going to step back a little bit in terms of being overly critical, because it is just sort of basically an action sort of fantasy film. It's not trying to be anything too clever or anything like that. Plot lines and stuff, there is a bit there, but it's nothing sort of too deep or mindful in any sense of the words. And no one's going to be winning any awards for this in terms of acting or anything. Not that the acting was bad, but that's not the sort of film it is. Now going into sort of the film, Matt Damon, our main character, is from the start is going across what I understand would be the Silk Road, and him and his compatriots that he's with get attacked by some beast as they're at one of the evenings, and they manage to hack off one of its arms.
Hill tribes. It's no man. Then what is it? Whatever it is, it's hunting.
And as they progress along the Silk Trail, they get to the Great Wall, or they're sort of captured and taken to the Great Wall, and they go and meet the general there and everything, as captives in essence. Partly because I think generally Westerners aren't too trustworthy, because they're usually going there to try and steal Chinese secrets, and that's exactly why Matt Damon is there, along with one of his compatriots, who's one of the princes from Game of Thrones, one of the Dornish princes, who's, I forget the name of his character in that, but his name I think is Pedro Pascal or something along those lines. So yeah, Matt Damon and his companion are taken to the general and basically have to explain what they're doing there and all of this sort of stuff. And as it unfolds, it turns out they've been attacked by one of these beasts, and all these Chinese generals and all the loads of army, they're in the sort of the kind of the hall as such on the wall, are very intrigued by this, and they want to know how they've done that, and it's partly to do with this thing that they found out there, which we won't go into too much. But as this is sort of unfolding, the alarms and sort of warnings start going off, and the wall is being attacked by a massive horde of these beasts. And so we switch to that, and so it starts getting into that reasonably quickly, which is good. And this particular scene isn't too bad. And like I say, I'm sort of standing back. I'm not going to be overly critical, but there were a couple of bits in this particular opening sort of battle scene which did seem a little bit silly. Matt Damon, now he's a prisoner. The sort of general decides they won't sort of lock him in a dungeon or whatever. They'll take him up to the top of the wall, and I don't know, they can watch what's going on. They'll still be captive and tied up and everything. So they get taken up to the top of the wall. And this is one of the areas where it's just a little bit silly for me, because they get told to sort of sit down, and there's a few guards sort of watching them. So they're sort of sitting down on top of the wall, tied up, while this battle is beginning on to unfold with all these beasts and stuff that I'll go into a bit more about what they're about shortly. But yet they seem to be able to see every single thing that's going on this battlefield. They've got like a 360-degree vision. And there's a few little bits here where Matt Damon and the other character he's with sort of maybe have to sort of, they're overly simplifying, they're like having to explain to the audience a little bit what's going on. There's no need. It's pretty obvious to see what's going on. But yeah, it was a bit weird how they could see everything when clearly they couldn't, because they were sitting down. They probably couldn't see much of what was going on at all, to be honest. But by the by, and there was this other one bit in there which just seemed pointless to me. I guess it's all for the action and sort of making things cool, and all the different sort of weapons and sort of defensive machinery that the Chinese have built to defend themselves against this was all cool. But one of them was where these female soldiers basically bungee off these kind of planks that are away from the wall and start sticking spears in these monsters down at ground level and then go back up. But really, most of the time what was happening was they were just getting eaten. It didn't really seem to make any sense. If you're sort of 40 feet or whatever above the ground, that's a significant advantage. Why would you bungee down? That was a bit silly to me. I know it was all for the sort of like the effects and stuff, but that seemed like just killing off loads of cool troops that you could have kept. But on the whole, that particular scene and the other sort of few battle scenes that we have that are kind of similar, that get where the wall gets attacked and stuff throughout the film, all look pretty good. Now, going into these beasts, there's sort of three types. You've got sort of the ground troops, which are sort of almost dog-like monsters, so they sort of have eyes on the side of their head, and they're quite hard to kill, these things. You have to basically get them in the eyes to kill them. You've then got the sort of the bodyguard of the Queen, and then you've got the Queen itself. Now, the Queen basically controls the entire sort of army, and she sort of does this sort of through a telepathic or sort of vibration-like sort of communication to all the other troops, and as we learn as the film goes on, lo and behold, kill the Queen, and everything else basically just stops. That they won't attack anymore. So you know, if they can kill the Queen, that's the way to do it. Although the Queen is very well protected, so it is difficult to do that. And as the film goes on, there's a few other sort of plots within it. Matt Damon, our sort of Western hero, you know, a little bit cheesy that. He does have a sort of a bit of a romance with one of the female generals, which is perfectly fine and pushes things along. The more slightly interesting plot is actually the sort of the issue Matt Damon has, because his background is he's a mercenary, and I think, you know, he sort of fought for a lot of different people for different battles. He's not allied to any particular country or anything like that. He's fought for all sorts, and it sounds like also he's maybe a little bit of a criminal background, and not the, you know, the most sort of wholesome character. And he's there basically to steal the black powder. But he's also now sort of feeling slightly attached not only to this Chinese general, but the sort of the whole thing in essence, because if these beasts manage to get past the wall, they'll get into China, and then once they start eating more meat and giving it to the Queen, she can multiply even more troops, and basically they'll take over the world. So he's sort of realising that maybe this is quite a significant thing, and maybe he can become, not a hero as such, but improve his honour a little bit. William Dafoe is also there. He's a Westerner who arrived about 20 years ago and has not sort of been trapped there, but he wants to steal the black powder as well, but has never really found the opportunity to do so. And with these two now arriving, he sees he's already sort of got plans in place, and with these two here now, he feels he can, you know, escape with the black powder. So Matt Damon basically has to decide whether he's going to sort of, you know, save the world, classic Matt Damon style, which, you know, he loves doing, or nick the gunpowder, which you can probably guess which way he went. And as the story sort of unfolds, it turns out that these beasts and stuff have found a way to sort of bypass the wall, which means that the Chinese army on the wall and everything need to, well, it all kind of falls apart a little bit, to be honest. But they need to head to the city as ASAP, because they need to stop these monsters from killing everyone there. Otherwise, they, you know, it will just become uncontrollable. So the plan is, along with a few things that are sort of developed, which I won't go into too much, but the plan is to basically kill the Queen. Now, this opens up a sort of slightly strange bit where they decide to use these hot air balloons, which are obviously pretty rudimental at this point, because the wind speed will get them there quicker than sort of going on horseback or whatever, which probably seems a little bit unusual, especially with very rudimental ones. And I mean, they don't shy away from this, but most of these balloons just went up in flames. It was quite dramatic watching it, but seemed a little bit silly. And also the fact that they'd made so many of these things, considering they obviously don't really work, which they kind of referenced before there. So that was kind of a bit of a suicide mission. But fortunately, our female general was one of the main characters, and Matt Damon eventually get to the main city. And, you know, I won't spoil it too much, but the world didn't get taken over, let's put it that way. So, on the whole, I didn't mind this film as much as I thought I would. As it sort of first, when I was seeing it's going to have these monsters, I think, oh, this is going to be really stupid. And that opening, not the opening scene, but the first battle was good to watch and entertaining to watch, but there were some silly things going on. To be honest, that dulled down. It didn't become like really strict and sensible, but that dulled down a little bit as the film went on, or maybe I dulled down to that as the film went on. Probably more likely the latter, actually. But with that happening, I started to probably enjoy it a little bit more. So my final score maybe is a little bit generous, but I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.